when I was learning French in Quebec, I would generally have to speak to somebody and look to practice. Like that was the best way to learn. And unfortunately, the accent in Quebec is so hard. It was very difficult to learn French in Quebec. If you've ever heard, I'm not saying I love Quebec.
Yeah,
It's just that learning French was very difficult.
I do too. Yeah.
Um, Nowadays, I practice with an AI that listens to me every day. It doesn't make fun of me when I get it wrong. It lets me know where I can improve, and and it speaks perfectly. Like it truly, it can slow. I can ask it to slow down, and it will slow down. It will say, it will repeat. It doesn't get tired. That is a revolution for me because anyone who wants to learn a new language can now do it at home for free. They do not need to go to someone or go anywhere. They could be in a country completely off the map that nobody knows about, somehow gets, but they have access to the internet and learn a completely new language.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that are saying, okay, yeah, and around the world, you say, yeah, we know where Canada is. And British Columbia, right on the west coast, right? Right. And then we have this big, beautiful city, Vancouver. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver. And for our European friends, 800 kilometers, which puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north-south, east-to-west. And it is nature's paradise, I call it, because we got lots of trees, lots of timber. We have black bears, grizzly bears, mooses, caribou, deer, you name it, we have it all. And so today, a very interesting podcast. His name is Dr. Don Simmonds, and Don is a trademark attorney with over a decade of experience specializing in intellectual property law and, more recently, artificial intelligence. And I'm sure how the one connects with the other. He brings a unique perspective, intersection of law, technology, innovation, helping businesses from startup industry leaders navigating complex legal landscape, IP, and AI. And he, today at least, is speaking from us from Paris, France. Don, welcome to the show.
Yes. Hello. Good to
Hello.
be here.
So, give us some of your background. You got an amazing background about where you're originally from, your training. You attended several universities, obviously, and then got a degree in law, but went far beyond that as it applies to first intellectual property, IP, and then more recently, the amazing things that are happening around AI, which is changing the whole world to a lot of people, including me. And I hope that at the end of this podcast with you, that it becomes a lot clearer to us where we are in regards to those connections. Where do we go from here, and how do we get there?
Sure. I don't know exactly where to start. I could start when I was young and came to Canada,
I
if
like
that's
all of
okay with
that.
you.
I
You
start
want
there.
all of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Like you, I immigrated to Canada, although I did not choose it. I came with my parents from Jamaica. I was only two and a half, and I don't really know Jamaica as well as I know Canada. I grew up in Canada.
Which
Obviously,
part of
went to
Canada,
school.
Don?
Oh, right. I went to school in Toronto
Okay.
and spent most of my young years there and went to a music school called Winona. So I had a strong music background. I played piano, played saxophone, alto sax, and then I played the flute because the fingering was the same. And then I played bassoon because I loved the sound. Traveled with an orchestra to the US.
Wow.
Also played. Yeah, so music was a very strong part of my youth.
Right.
And that was what led me into intellectual property because of the copyright relationship. I was making music. I was deep into being a DJ and doing a lot of things that was music related at the time.
Did you look
And
at that as a profession potentially or becoming professional?
um, well, in my youth, in my innocence, I did feel that in some way it could be something I get like money from and make into a career. However, I was very, let's say, careful and decided to also get my audio engineering degree so that if at least if music didn't work out, I could work in the field of music and sorry, diploma, not a degree. And I learned how to be an audio engineer at that time while I was making music. So yeah, I worked for CTV with Lloyd Robertson.
Oh my
I
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him. We'd work together on the week. Well, he was more during the week, but I did see him. I worked with CTV for a few years, and then I worked for CTV. I mean, CBC. So I know. Yeah, I got into the news side of things there.
So, how long were you in Canada during this particular period?
I was in Toronto until I was 27, and
Okay.
that's when I was working for CTV. But I felt that I was being limited. I needed something. I needed a bigger challenge. And I wanted to learn French as well. So I felt the best solution was to go to Montreal specifically
Yeah.
and, try my hand at French and take classes in French and eventually um, go to university. So I ended up at Concordia taking poli sci and practicing my French.
So,
Um,
does that university teach in French or English or both?
It's an English university, but because I was in Montreal, I was surrounded by French, so I was able to at least try and practice. I did take courses. The government had courses, free courses that you could take to improve your French. And then I was working in Montreal, so I had to have some basic French because I was call it audio engineer for a conference services company. So I improved my French a lot, not so much that I could be perfect conversation, but it helped.
Yeah.
And it helped me enough to get into McGill Law, where I took I got two law degrees at the same time.
McGill Law is in the United States,
McGill University is at McGill University. McGill Law is at McGill University. Sorry,
and that is
you know
located,
McGill,
yeah,
Montreal,
in Montreal.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for the guests watching from around the world that may respectfully not be fully aware of that, Canada, very interesting country, but we have two official languages. The one is English and the other one is French. And that is based primarily in Quebec and some of the eastern provinces to a certain extent, but predominantly in Quebec. And it is a requirement, especially if you fly in airplanes. Canadian airplanes, we have two official languages. They speak both of them. It's very good to know the French, as you are well aware of, is slightly different than it is in France, where you are now, but
Yeah.
still it is part of the official languages. So, that being said, I interrupted you. Take us further to McGill and law degrees going forward.
So I always knew I wanted to be in intellectual property because I had a music background and copyright was something that I was very interested in. So when I applied for to get my law degree, I knew that I wanted to focus on IP, trademarks, copyrights, and patents. And McGill gives you two law degrees. I definitely think it's the hardest school, but of course, I didn't go to another law school. I'm just saying we had to do two degrees at the same time. So I received a common law degree that's for English, the English region or English countries generally, and then I also received a civil law degree, and that's for mostly what they call continental. Um, continental countries like France and Germany, where they have their rules in a book. Uh, I can't explain it any better than that because we also have rules in books in common law, but that's the deepest I'll go because it's very complex. Let's just say I have two different law degrees and one's a Juris Doctorate.
So suffice to say, complex even in common law as we practice it or teach it here, and here meaning in our universities, and how most people like me think about law, that you get a law degree and then from there on in you make choices. Likely will you go into civil law or uh, criminal law potentially, or become part of government, being a prosecutor or something like that. But then specialties inside of that, even here in Canada, and I presume, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, the same in the United States. Then again, in civil law, there are different directions. One of them would be in intellectual property or business law or other specialties that would be separate, and now obviously add to that AI.
Yeah, it's I'd say for the most part, you are correct. And AI is not really a specific field of law that is recognized at the moment. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe in the future. But yes, for civil law, which is basically splitting it from criminal law, you would have mostly intellectual property and some other genres. But it doesn't mean that you can't have criminal. Mixing with civil in a certain area, like intellectual property. They're not split so definitely.
Right.
It's just that, just to make it clear, if I hope I am.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, you have several fields across the board, like family, business, IP, intellectual property, tax. There's many. There are many fields.
But then, Don, what you did or what you are is that because of what you taught at McGill, also thinking Europe, it gave you knowledge about their legal practice systems they have there to mix the two, which gave you a unique base, more so ever than even now than it was before, where
Well,
we more and more part of a global interaction legally as well, adding to that IP. And the reason that I threw in AI because that will become part of our conversation as it
right.
will become something that is in motion and likely will become extremely dominant and touch everyone everywhere in similar fashion. As an old guy, I've seen it all. I'm 84 now, and I was still at the point that iPhones were something of the size of a shoe. And then I saw the first computers in the early 80s. All of that changed the world. AI likely will do the same and start affecting all the other things that we do, but even more so globally. And it appears to me, looking at your bio and our discussion, that you have the perfect foundation because that requirement, what Gil taught you, going into two different directions, will likely become more and more part of the knowledge requirements that you have if you want to be making a difference globally and without having to rely on a whole lot of other interaction you have to do in order to analyze cases that are being presented to you.
Yeah, I agree. I was taught at McGill. And luckily, I did take two different law degrees, which those are the main two around the world. And you're right. By having those two backgrounds, I do understand law in a much broader sense. So it does help me, especially in the area of AI, which is, like you said, going to change us so significantly. As much as the internet did by itself, I think
Right.
AI will do the same.
Yeah.
The funny thing about AI is that for many years we've heard about it. It's not something that we didn't know existed. It just never really came to fruition. Although they've been trying, and little we received little pieces of it, but in the last couple of years, it really has exploded. And I know what, and we're just in the first couple of years. You can imagine what's going to happen in 10, 20 years, how this, I mean, it's truly going to be an astounding um, change for everyone.
Everyone and everything, right?
Yeah, across the board. There's no question that this thing we have, and I know there are a lot of concerns what it can be used for, um, good and bad. It's very, usually when you have a new technology, you're going to have that. You're going to have this ability to use it in so many different ways.
Yeah,
Um,
and having governments say, should we get involved? Should we change this? Oh my God, it's going to be this, that, and the other thing. Allow it to, it is there. The genie will never go back into the bottle.
no,
And from here
no,
on in, look at it in terms of, okay, accept what it is. How can we make it work for us? And what will it look like as it affects our lives? Me as a business person in Canada and other people across the globe. And where does it offer opportunity in particular to us as we stand there at the beginning, just passing the threshold? AI will change your life. There is no question about that. And what does that really mean? That's where we are. That's where I am as a layperson in a way, and obviously looking at the globe. And that's why it is so interesting to have somebody like yourself that has, specialized in that particular field. So important to articulate at least your view as it may apply to us as the
mhm.
common population.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a small anecdote and a few other
Yeah.
stories, but the first one would be when I was learning French in Quebec, I would generally have to speak to somebody and look to practice. Like that was the best way to learn. And unfortunately, the accent in Quebec is so hard. It was very difficult to learn French in Quebec. If you've ever heard, I'm not saying I love Quebec.
Yeah,
It's just that learning French was very difficult.
I do too. Yeah.
Um, Nowadays, I practice with an AI that listens to me every day. It doesn't make fun of me when I get it wrong. It lets me know where I can improve, and it speaks perfectly. Like it truly, it can slow. I can ask it to slow down, and it will slow down. It will say, it will repeat. It doesn't get tired. That is a revolution for me because anyone who wants to learn a new language can now do it at home for free. They do not need to go to someone or go anywhere. They could be in a country completely off the map that nobody knows about, somehow gets, but they have access to the internet and learn a completely new language.
And you can do it, correct me if I'm wrong, even on your cell phone while you,
Yes,
yes.
I
And
do.
so,
In fact, that's how I use it right
and,
now.
and, and, and so the language tool is part of what you has as one of the applications on your cell phone.
Yes, I use ChatGPT, but I also use some others. But the idea is that you could press a button, and then after you tell it to speak to you in French or whatever language you want, it will continue to do that the entire time you're in the conversation. And that to me is a revolution. That's just one. I
Yeah.
have so many, but that is just a basic, change that will affect. Right now is just beginning, but many years down the line, you will see people with multiple languages who want to learn English or German or you name it, Japanese. You know, it goes on.
Or, correct me if I'm wrong, I can go to like I speak also Dutch, obviously, I was born there, and that I can speak Dutch. And while I'm speaking Dutch, my app will translate it physically in English or French and will receive the reply in the other language and translate it to me as they speak. So we can really have a dialogue like you and me now have in English. For all intents and purposes, you could also speak French through your AI, and it would translate that as we speak. And that's already that we have today.
Yes, we already have that, and this is interesting that you brought that up. Remember, I said that I was working in part of conferences when I was in Montreal. That was how I earned a living. That the company I worked for specifically provided interpreters, translators for big conferences, government, or what you name it. And these interpreters would and translators would receive a certain amount of money per hour, and they would do live as well as post. But the one thing I know is that AI will definitely revolutionize this particular area because it's very good at listening and translating on the spot without missing a beat. And so, yeah, this is definitely going to affect that. that um,
So that being one that everybody can relate to, all of a sudden you do not necessarily have to learn the other language, whatever that may be it be Dutch, German, French, Italian, Spanish, whatever, Portuguese for that matter, that you don't need to learn it because you can use your AI, speak in your mother tongue, or in my case, English or Dutch, and they will translate it for me instantly, receive the response, give it to me back in the language that I'm speaking in. So it will be the interaction between all those different languages and us, and all of a sudden it opens up all of that for us.
yes, agreed. Yeah. Everyone has their own personal interpreter,
Yes, more or
essentially.
less. Isn't it amazing?
Yes, I think it is. Yes.
So the other part, though, Don, is that intellectual property, but in a way and that was initially your the specialty that you focused on, including the other ones, European law, obviously, is that uh, as I see the legal system now from my perspective here, is a lot of times because of introducing I have an issue, hypothetically speaking. I have a number of different companies, and so we have a legal issue that we are searching for. The normal thing would be for us to contact our legal counsel, lay it in front of them, and saying, give me a legal opinion about that.
Right.
Now, what I can do is I can go to not only AI, the expanded AI, if you wish, because it gets further specialized all the time, and put in there the issue, and it will virtually instantly spit out a course of action.
Yes, I've heard that. I mean, I've even done that. Now the question is, when you do that, uh, it depends on how you're doing it, what platform you're using. There are a lot of little things that are kind of important because a lot of companies are going to be doing what you're doing or already doing what you're doing. Instead of going to cancel, they're using an AI to get the answer. So this is it'll lead to talking about the innovation that I have. But my question is, when you do that, where are you doing it? What platform are you using when you do that?
Yeah. So now we are somewhat different than most people. We have 10 different companies. We have in-house counsel. And so, so what we are doing is basically saying something to the extent that you are doing is saying that if we have let me give you a bit of a model of the companies that I'm involved in. I have 5 different silos. The one silo is lumber manufacturing. The other silo is warehousing, distribution, and logistics. The other silo is real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. And then the other silo is media. And so, and in the media, I'll be doing, I'm a presenter, speaker, then writing books. Then the other one is obviously podcasting. And then the other one we're exploring is having a platform. So all of that kind of touches on intellectual property, touches on other things that we are really not familiar with, but the other part is that part of our management team, also the one is a certified legal counsel. And so he becomes part of our team because we are doing so many different things so, but already what we are doing is from time to time, if we doing a presentation, we likely will put it through AI, as already a lot of people are doing. If we have a complex issue, problem issues, we may throw it into AI for ideas or concept. Then we may modify it, do it again, modify it again, because there are certain areas that are not clear and complicated, and we try to further analyze those. And then at some point we may bring in other specialty counsel, or so the point that I'm trying to make for our people that are watching us, although I'm in business, but also that applies to the common individuals, that if they run into legal issues, may they be personal, may they be business related, or do they need help from counsel to a certain extent, a lot of it can be found on Google and touching on AI to give them a direction.
Yeah, and it's really important to clarify the path that people take, because I agree that you can use AI at the very earliest stages when you have a legal issue and you want to understand it, because it's good for basic understanding of your situation. Usually, before
Yeah.
a year ago, 2 years ago, they were still working. They weren't that great, but now they've improved it enough that I can say, yes, if you go online, you will get a basic understanding of your situation, and then you could use that to decide on what you want to do next. Um, Ultimately, you could have gone to an attorney to do that, but a lot of the time, people don't have access, or they don't have time, or it's just a quick thing they want to address, and they don't want to, and then they'll decide if they want to move forward with an attorney or not.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I always say that after that initial understanding that you might get from ChatGPT or one of those other platforms, the best thing to do is go, okay, if I need an attorney, if I'm not too sure about this, I should definitely move on and talk to an attorney. Because if you continue to use just the chat GPT or any of these platforms and think that it's going to give you a very robust and analyzed response, then I would be very careful there, because it's not made to. It doesn't really do that. It's not made to do that, but it is made to give you a good understanding of what your situation is. Yeah, like there's a key difference, and the attorney, the chat bot or GPT doesn't have any responsibility towards you if they give you information. It's, take it or leave it, and they could be hallucinating, which means that they could be making up things on the spot to fill in the blanks, because they don't really know. It won't say I don't know. It will just put something in there like fake case law or something like that. It does that, and that's the thing we have to sort of be careful about.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you, I believe, is that accountability and interpretations that may fall into, let's call it the soft area, that would happen in a face-to-face, or in a local regional council that is familiar with certain settings that would not add that particular element to it. And then obviously accountability is something that legal counsel would have if they advise you or represent you in a case of your interest, and that element would not be there. But at the same time, though, for general information that sometimes we, including me and others, say, I wonder what the legal direction would be in something like this. Put it in Google, put it through AI, and it may give you information that is useful. And as we go further into AI, which is still very much in progress, then that becomes more interesting as we go in all elements of all the things that we do. In fact, you can write a book now in about half an hour or so.
Yes.
Hypothetically speaking, obviously it would not be, a personal thing, but you can put something into AI virtually and say, "Write me a book,"
Yes, they could. And people are.
and
They
people
do
are.
have yeah, they're writing many books now thanks to AI in much less time than they normally would.
So the
Um,
other things that have happened, and just following up AI just a little bit more, there was a recent development that AI and all the technology that is built into the, I call it the equipment, but probably I'm using the wrong word, is the chips and the density of data and information to preserve that. More and more and more data and information goes in and is being protected to a certain amount, that to get access to that ability to do that cost tens of millions or even not hundreds of millions of dollars. And the Chinese discovered something that they, and it has been all over the news, are saying they can do that at a fraction of the cost, and it kind of threw everything up and saying, oh my God, now what happens?
yeah, I, I understand it to some degree. The idea is that many people thought it would take, well, and it did take hundreds of millions, billions to train the LLM, the large language model, using traditional methods. But through innovation, a group in China decided to use another method to train, which was way more effective. Apparently, they did it with 6 million or less US dollars, which is 1% of what it would cost, I think, or 10%. I can't remember. It's 10% of 1%,
Yeah,
but much less
much less.
of
Yeah.
what than it would normally cost. And that obviously threw the whole everyone was shocked, did not expect that. But that's a good thing for everyone because it does say that AI is accessible to almost anyone. And this is just the first, you know, in reinterpretation of AI for for a much lower cost. Somebody's going to come along and make it even less than that. It's just a matter of time. So when people hear it's going to cost that much less, more people are going to jump in, and then somebody else is going to figure out a way to make it cost even less than that. So that's the beauty of it right now. I think we're just at the earliest stages, and I just wanted to sort of return to what we were talking about in the AI legal field, so
Yeah.
that sort of cap it. Um, I My innovation was in the field of AI and legal services. I have a company called Bron AI, BRON-AI.com. We provide legal services to other law firms, and what we do is I'm in trademark law, so often when somebody applies for a trademark, they get rejected. And this could be because there's another trademark there, or because their trademark is too descriptive. And I've drafted a whole lot of arguments that that I would have to send in to say, please accept our application for these reasons. And there are full legal arguments that you have to send in, and usually you cite case law when you send it in. However, I realized that if I was able to program AI well, I can have it draft my arguments for me as long as I input certain information. And what would normally take me about 8 hours to do, maybe more, it can do in 5 minutes. So I basically drew the time down from 1 day to 1.5 days to 10, well, at max 2 hours if I really want to add a lot of stuff to it. But I'd say if I put it in and take it out, 10 minutes, it's done. And I just have to add, if I want, add a couple of things to it. But that is the revolution in that, just so we get back to, remember you said that somebody would go online and maybe use AI to understand the case or word the situation legally. The issue I found was that AI would hallucinate. It would make up cases. So we address that with having our own repository of case law that the AI only always references. It does not reference anything else, does not make up anything. All the case law is always up, well, it's is up to date as we can make it, but it's always referenced legal case law that is valid. So that is the innovation in the field that we have right now.
So this is very, very significant because your specialty is in trade law and trademarks that is dealing in global business and companies like even like ourselves or anybody hypothetically speaking that give you an example. We're thinking about a platform that we want to use and then we want to protect certain parts of that particular platform because we will be using it globally. And after we do our research, we likely will have to go through somebody that, an organization that understands trademarking globally and great trade law, so it protects us from going forward. And that would be a company like yourself that specializes in that field, right?
Right. We would be helping to make sure your brand, your trademark is protected around the world and managing it, licensing it to any others who might want to use your brand name. That's what we do. We're yeah, worldwide with our services. And thanks to AI, we're much more effective than before, a
And
couple of years
so
ago.
that part is still all changing because of AI. And then the other part, as you already know, I'm 84 years old. Got a birthday here 2 weeks ago, actually, and I say I'm 84 years young.
Yes.
And so was born in 1940. Wrote a number of books. I'm going to tell you. So, what is important to me? The age is just a number, but is the most important part is quality of life. And the last book that I wrote, and they have another one coming out on communications, but this one is Living Young, Dying Old. It's a picture of me actually.
Yes.
And so the case that I'm making here is that, as I said earlier, age is just a number, it's quality of life. And then this picture of me, I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And
Wow.
so, and the whole reason for it that I'm doing what I'm doing is all about quality of life.
Yeah.
And longevity is important. Our bodies are extremely forgiving and if we treat it well, but it will only take so much abuse for a period of time. And a lot of times, what happens to people as they reach the average age that the decade before, they gradually become more challenged and need more medicine of some sort or another, which, all due respect, can well be toxic in a lot of ways, fix one problem but create problems on another half a dozen different places. So we try to avoid that as much as we can and to become proactive and understanding your body. To me, what is important, keeping it fairly simple, is that vitamin D is important, sunshine is important. Get sleep 8 to 9 hours a day. I try to do that. get exercise. You don't have to become an Olympian or a competitive bodybuilder. That is just something that happens circumstantial because I got the commitment. I have to go to the gym, work hard when I'm there to try to stay fit. And then the other part, which is important to me, is diet. And if my wife is vegetarian, and I'm close to that. I'm vegan more than that, probably 90-10 in that area. When I go shopping in a store, I usually stay on the outside because I don't want to go to the inside aisles. They have usually the processed foods, the super processed. I have no idea what is in it, and I don't want that. And so, and I try to buy as much vegetarian as we can that that is organic, and be very careful about diet. So taking care of your body is important, and then the mind is important. That keep active. So many people I see at older age, that are not doing well, and they are already 45 years old, and they say, "Well, I'm too old to do this." And no, is can do is everything. And even for me at 84, I can be active. Obviously, I'm active in companies, 10 different companies. It's not about that, but and at the same time writing books, being an active podcaster, and a speaker, and staying active. Every morning I get up at 5:30. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. and I work every day, and I'm staying very active. So the point that I want to make is this one, is that part to me is important. Stay physically active, mentally active. And then the other part is that since I was born in 1940, that when I came to Canada in 1965, when I was about 24 years old, then I interacted with my parents in Holland by telegram. And I would send a telegram saying, "Okay, it's Friday today. I'm doing well. Stop. Need a little bit of money. Stop. Otherwise, I'm doing okay." And then I wait for a response, where then through the evolution of time, gradually we went to the point of it became easier. Then telephone, which was not used all that much, even regular telephones was not used because it was too expensive. Gradually we got cell phones, and it was the big shoe size ones. And then from there on in, obviously we go to through the computers, starting with Apple, and all the ones, every step forward. And then today where we are is that I want to talk to somebody in Holland. I push the button, I can see them, do whatever I want to do, everything has changed so rapidly over that period of time. It's hard to imagine that this in 1965, 66, 67, that to contact my family in Holland would be a challenge to do that. But today, I push a button and I got them on the phone. No problem at all. We're talking about Google. We can Google. We can talk about AI. And then the other part, Don, which is just amazing, is there you are sitting today in Paris, France, and you're talking to me or with me here in central British Columbia, Canada, and it feels like you're sitting next to me on the chair right here. And that evolution is something is still in the very beginning, because podcasting, I call it the new media, is exploding as we go forward, and it's still at the very, very beginning. And so interaction between individuals like you and me, we already know a couple of things. A, we have a very interesting dialogue between us about very interesting, complicated issues in a way that make it simple, that will affect everybody in the world. And then at the same time, while we are doing this, We will release this podcast before the day is out in the next 5 to 6 hours, because that's what we do. And as we have been speaking, and then we already also know that from our, and I'm not bragging about it, that we have 750,000 subscribers on YouTube, which means on all the other platforms we probably have close to 2.5 million subscribers on committed areas, and probably millions more on other areas. It is absolutely unbelievable where
Mhm.
this platform is now and where it will go.
Mm. I commend you on it. It takes a long time to build a loyal crowd, a loyal following. So obviously you guys have done the work and done an excellent job. I've had a podcast many years ago, so I do know what it takes to put it together and put it out. I really do respect everything you've built, and I'm very happy that the audience will be able to hear us discuss this topic. Um,
But it's all part of the future, and saying, where do we go from here? Is that podcasting will and is the new media globally, where people from far and wide can see and listen to, current issues that are being discussed, and via podcasting, people from Australia, from China, Russia, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Paris, obviously included. And it is just an absolutely amazing, and taking it back in time to when I was sending a telegram to my parents, and then every so often write a letter that then would go and say, well, write me more often, because we want to make sure you're okay. And it would take weeks before the one come back and the one come forth. Now we just push the button, and or they or we can watch. In
yeah.
my case, can watch you on. I have people from Europe contact me and say, "Hey, I saw this podcast with blah 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 and blah blah blah. Can you believe this?" So it's
Yeah.
amazing and exciting to the public in general, and so that makes it so special. And then if you can kind of thinking about all of these things, taking forward for yourself, that has had such an amazing background and such an amazing foundation in law, and but even more so globally, and how it is changing your life, your business, and your interaction with globally with your specialties, trade marketing, and things related to that in any language, because you can now, as you already explained to us, go to Madrid and hypothetically speak in Spanish if you wish, but your interpreter is in your pocket. It's called iPhone.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's it's truly a revolution, and we're again only at the earliest stages of this. I cannot predict, although I can anticipate what will happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I do know that technology is progressing much faster than it used to. So we're not even used to the new pace of technology. It's going to progress even faster than what
Share
was it,
with us what
telegrams?
you think it will be.
What I think, I definitely see robots being, part of the future in a much more. Before I would think robots would be farther away, but with AI, I think it's actually going to happen a lot sooner. Um, so that's going to be a thing, like robots moving everywhere amongst us. Um, I do think that children around the world will be better educated because they have access to an AI for free that they can ask questions, learn from, be taught with. Before this was a gatekeep. That was you'd have to go to a very special school or private school, and that was my story. I never got to go to I didn't have all those things as a young kid, even though I wanted it. Now, as a young kid, you can have a special AI given to you that has been trained on the best teachers in the world. And it could basically teach you all you need to know moving forward. This was not a thing, and you would have to pay. Now it's almost free to get that sort of education. So that is definitely going to be coming and changing the world. We'll have a lot brighter kids coming in the future. Um, and the woof, where else will it? That's the beauty of AI. It's so pervasive. It you can barely I can barely tell you how many more places it's going to.
The,
Media, film, TV, you name it.
the other part I want to add to that is that just because of our conversation, but all the things that I've made the observation as an old guy, I don't call myself an old guy, I call me 84 years young, but still being progressive, looking at this as the future. What will it look like? There will be no longer borders between countries.
Yeah, this I've
Not
always
maybe physically, but in terms of
no,
I
no, no,
can
yeah, yeah, I
interact with
understand.
anybody because I
Yeah.
push the button and that will make a major change. And then the other part will be, as you already said, is that younger people, in terms of studying, getting private schooling, like and I have to just add this to it. You probably already know it. I was blessed with having ADHD, and so I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and then when I did,
Wow.
they said to my parents, what are we going to do with this guy? And I was 12 and a half years old, and they said, well, send him to the mentally challenged school. They said, no, we're not going to do that. We'll teach him a trade. So at 12 and a half years old, I started to become a laborer in a furniture factory. And I did that, and then I had a dream that when I would grow up, albeit also at the Second World War, and we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945, it made such an impression on me that my dream was to go to the land of my heroes. And then the lack of formal education here in Holland was that no matter what you do, they always ask, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas. So I wanted to start new here with nothing, to prove to me that I was just as smart as everybody else. Not better than, but just as smart. So when I came here, I wanted to build a sawmill. And so it was July of 1965. I came off the bus here in Prince George 60 years ago with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47, but I had positive attitude, always have had. I will avoid negative. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. Work ethic, I work harder, as I said earlier already, than anybody else. I get up at 5:30. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late.
Yes,
So
I think that's
the other part to me which made a difference is ADHD. I felt I had to write a book about it because I call it a superpower. And I believe that with AI and all the things that are happening, we're starting to realize that ADHD is much more common than most people, and I have dyslexia as well as ADHD, much more common throughout the world than first was anticipated. And so opportunities are presented once you remove the stigma, and it happens gradually. Then we see that people that have challenges in those areas are getting more access through virtual TV, podcasting, and in other ways to help them in a number of areas. How to make it work for you, not having it as a liability, and how to go forward, since probably 25 to 30% of the population globally, male and female, although they present it differently, have what I call the benefit, and in some cases other people would say it's a stigma, but I don't believe that. But having more ability to focus on the things that they are good in and excel. So I've always been good at numbers. I've always been good at, not at reading, but at writing. And then obviously I learned outside of the traditional schooling system. And I believe that AI in combination with podcasting, virtual TV, and understanding these issues better, that it will change our teaching systems around the world that have not fully incorporated those particular elements. And I believe that is what will happen.
I agree. I think you can have such a specialized sector or a specialized AI to help in a particular sector of people um, when it understands their background, their situation. I think it's going to help people progress so much faster. And just sort of add an anecdote. I've read about how an AI was able to analyze. Um, maybe I saw this, but the mother of the child put in various elements of issues that the child was having, and apparently the doctors were unable to, for some reason, many doctors were unable to assess what was going on. But the AI, after reviewing all of them, was able to pinpoint exactly what was going on and basically help the child to recover. And this is not one case. There are actually two cases that I've so far read about, or at least saw. And I feel that this is just the beginning,
And
that you're going to have a lot more of these cases showing up.
And I agree 100%, Don. And that's why I thought it was so important to look forward from your perspective and my perspective as to where do we go from here. That for those that believe that the genie should go back in the bottle, that will not happen. And will it be beneficial to us? Yes, it will be. Will there be ups and downs and challenges and saying, well, it's going to do this, that, and the other thing? At the end, it will be more positive, but the pace will pick up. It will be to the benefit of all, and it will be globally beneficial to all of us on this earth, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. I think the benefits are monumental, and we have only scratched the surface. So we'll see
Don,
how it turns out.
it was a privilege to have you on my podcast. And for all those people watching us that are interested in our podcasting and the views of Dr. Don Simmonds and other individuals like him that have such an amazing base and knowledge of our experience, sharing it with us, subscribe to our podcast if you want to see more of this, share it with others, like it where you can, make comments. And again, Dr. Don Simmonds, it was a privilege to have you on my podcast.
Thank you, John. It was a privilege to be here. Thank
It
you.
will be released later today in the next 5-6 hours.
Oh, looking forward to sharing it. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Take care.
Bye.